Hi, Anthony Bob Barker here, and today we're continuing the miter station build with making this double cabinet. So let's get to it. So the beginning of this video is a little similar to the other one, so I'm going to go a little bit quicker through the cabinet build, but I would definitely recommend checking out the first part if you want to see the cabinet structure in a bit more detail. And for this part of the miter station, we're going to be making two cabinets. The difference between these cabinets and the original one is this one is only going to have one drawer per cabinet on the top, and then it's going to have some cabinet doors and an adjustable shelf in the middle. And the reason why I'm doing it this way for this one is I'm just trying to maximize the storage for all my tools. So not everything fits neatly in drawers, so I wanted to make sure I had some good shelf storage as well. So we went through cutting down all of the pieces of the cabinet box and putting those rabbet joints on there for them as well. And for these cabinets, I'm going to be putting in a back panel that's inset in it. So I'm setting up to do some dado joints here. This is my test piece, just getting my settings dialed in first before I go to my actual work pieces. And once I'm happy with that, then I go ahead and start the dado on each one of my panels. Then we move our fence over and do a second cut just to get the width of that dado to where we want it. And then I did a test piece on this one as well and checking it to make sure it's a nice, good, snug fit. And I would definitely recommend doing test cuts on these type of things because it's much better to practice on that than it is to your bigger pieces. So now we got it dialed in, we go ahead and put those dados in the rest of them. And then we're ready to start assembling the cabinets. And we're using these positioning squares again. I really like these for putting these cabinets in. They're super useful. I am only showing one of the cabinets being put together here, but I am doing two of them because it's going to be extra wide on that side of my miter station. The reason for that is to maximize the storage, like I said, but also to give a good long surface to support the wood when I'm doing the cuts. And after I get it in place, I like to throw some extra clamps on there just to make sure everything glues up well, and then always check to make sure things remain square. And here my cabinet is definitely square, and I was checking the wood here and it came up a little short. Now I could just kind of squeeze that in and make it fit, but then the cabinet opening would be uneven from top to bottom, so I had to come up with a fix for it. And what I did is I basically just cut off tiny little thin strips using my crosscut sled there and just glued them to the edge of my support pieces. And it actually ended up working out pretty well. So with that settled, we can move on to cutting out our back panel. So we had this 1/4-inch piece of plywood that we just ran through the table saw to get a nice quick cut. Much easier to do that with this small piece as opposed to the 3/4-inch Baltic birch that I kind of use for most of the things I'm making here in the shop. And then we can get a test fit, and it slides in pretty nice. So next up was the toe kicks. So we went ahead and cut down those pieces. These ones are going to be slightly different than the last ones in sizing because for the last one I had an overhang on the front and the right side of the cabinet, but this one you're not really going to see those areas very well, so I'm just making it flush with the side edges of the cabinet. And just like last time, I am making this one separate from the cabinet, and I'll attach them later because I'm going to get them all nice and leveled before I put the cabinets on top of them. So we got a bunch of pocket holes. I use my clamp to make sure it doesn't wander on me when I'm securing it here in place. And of course, I'm always checking, make sure things stay nice and square for me as I'm doing it. And just like the previous one, we're going to be putting leveling legs here. And so these are just some extra pieces. That way I can have some room to support them. And I'm insetting those ones because the back end of my floor is higher significantly than the front end. So I needed to be able to recess the leveler legs there. Then we go ahead and drill out the holes for the T-nuts. Then, of course, tap them into place. And then we can just go ahead and screw in the levers after we get them all in. So now I'm going to put in the rest of the supports for the cabinet boxes. So we put one on front and one towards the back. That's going to lock that back panel into place. And then after that, we'll put them on the very back, which you'll never see these ones. And I did want to keep that panel in place. That way, when you open the cabinet doors, you won't see like the ugly wall. You'll see the wood panel backing, and then you can still use these supports to attach it to the wall if you want. So next we're start making the drawers for the cabinets, and these ones are going to have just one drawer on each, but they're going to be pretty wide. But they're also going to be shallow. So what I decided to do for this is just make a rabbet joint on the bottom, and then we're just going to drop a 1/2-inch piece of plywood there for the drawer bottom, and we'll just kind of secure it straight on that way. And as I'm watching this video, I'm kind of asking myself, why did I drill pocket holes and then brad nail it together? I have no clue what I was doing. But I did realize it at some point that I had pocket holes, so I did come back later on and actually put the pocket hole screws to keep this thing together. So now that we got a nice good snug fit with our bottom piece and it's still square, so then we can go ahead and pre-drill all of the holes for our screws, and I did countersink them so it's nice and flush underneath. Like I said previously, I did go with a 1/2-inch piece for the drawer bottom here just because it's so long. I was a little worried that the 1/4 inch just might sag a bit. So now we go ahead and get them installed. We'll put the slides here on the drawers themselves, and then I'll attach them to the cabinets just like I did for the last one. And I am using these Craig jigs again. They make this actually pretty nice and easy, although there's many other ways you can do this. Next is the most satisfying part of making drawers is actually putting them in for the first time. There's just something kind of nice about making a drawer, then putting it in and seeing it slide nice and smooth. So for the next part, I want to put an adjustable shelf in this area. So I figured out the general spot that I kind of wanted the shelf to be, and then I just got this block of wood just to place this little jig, and then I put the holes kind of centered around that spot so I can move it up and down if I want to. And I did that, of course, on both sides. So then we can put our pins in and set our shelf in place and see if it fits. The next up is making the top, and I'm going to do that with 3/4 inch MDF. I'm going to make this one extra long, that way it covers both of the cabinets. So I'll be cutting out 2 pieces and then laminating it together with tons of glue, and since I don't have the clamps to really support a good clamp glue up on this one, I'm going to do it just like last time. We'll just flip that over and then screw in a ton of screws in from the bottom end of the top surface. That way you'll never see these holes. And I do go by later on and remove the screws. So since the MDF is pretty dusty stuff, I took it outside just to flush up these edges. Now when I cut these, I intentionally cut one of them just a little bit bigger than the other. That way I can account for a little bit of wiggle room movement while I'm laminating them together, and then I just can go ahead and flush them up once I have them joined. So once we got that taken care of, next we're going to be putting on the trim here. And just like before, I'm using some poplar trim. Just kind of picked through what was at the box store and found some with the color that I want. And then just glue and brad nail that into place. And then for the front piece, there was a little bit of a bow in it, so I just clamped it into place, glued it, and then brad nailed it. And then once it dried, it stayed good. But unfortunately, one of my brad nails didn't go all the way in, so I actually just used this punch. I put it just right over the nail, just give it a nice little tap, and then it usually sinks it in nice for me, and then I can go in with some wood filler and cover that up, and then you'll never see it. And I did use the wood filler to fill up all the other brad nail holes, and then after that we give it a good sanding, and then I just took that chance to go ahead and sand everything else. And then for this one, I'm using some wipe-on polyurethane, so we're putting a few coats of that on everything as well. And then next we'll be making the cabinet doors. So I had this jig here, and it makes it a little bit easier for the concealed hinge hardware. So it makes that hole in the middle, and it has 2 little ports there for the extra screws. So it makes it nice and quick to get that ready. I did want to mention I do have links in the description for the tools and hardware that I'm using in case anybody's interested in it. You can check that out. So with the cabinet door ready, I went ahead and measured out my spacing for the hardware to attach to the cabinet itself. So I just kind of mark those out, put that in place, and I use the self-centering drill bit there just to pre-drill, and then we screw those in place, and it's ready to go on. And just a quick tester while it's there on the floor just to make sure it works, and it did. So now we're ready to put the cabinets in their final home. So I started off just by screwing these toe kicks together. Then we made all the adjustments with the levelers to get these nice and level. And you can see on the other cabinet that we made in the last video, I took all the drawers out and the cabinet off it as well. And I used that to make sure that all 3 of those toe kicks were level. So both of the cabinets will be absolutely level once I get these all into place. So we set those down, and I ended up using some clamps there just to kind of keep those nice in place and then screw those together. And I'm picking places that you won't be able to see. So this one is going to be hidden by the drawer. And I'm also going to take this chance to secure the cabinets to the toe kicks. Now these ones will be kind of visible, so I'm using some trim head screws. That way it won't be too noticeable. And of course, if that bothers you, you could always just fill it in with wood filler after you screw it into place. And if you decided to secure it directly to the wall, you wouldn't even have to do this because you can secure both the toe kick and the cabinet to the wall and it'll never move. So now that we got that ready, we can go ahead and just screw the top into place. And we're just going straight through those supports that we put in earlier. Then we can reinstall the drawers. And the shelves. Now I did have to make a little adjustment because when I put in the polyurethane, I actually put it on the sides and it actually got too wide, so I had to do a little finagling to make sure that worked. And there you can see I'm putting in a couple more screws just to kind of secure the cabinets together, and I'm hiding it with the shelves as well. So now that we got it all secured, we can put our cabinet doors in place. And I wanted to put the cabinet doors in place before I put the drawer faces on because I figured it'd be a little bit easier just to do that and get the spacing and placement right this way. And the hinges themselves have a lot of adjustments so you can make sure that you get it all lined up the way you like it. So I'm using the jig that I had from the past cabinet just to get my holes there, and I'm screwing those in place with some spacers underneath on top of the cabinet doors, and that gets me the spacing that I want. Then after that, we can just drill from the inside, secure the drawer in place, and then we can take out those temporary screws and then fully drill through that using a backer piece so we don't blow out the back of the drawer there. And then after that, it's on to putting on the hardware. We're using the same ones that we used on the other drawer just to make sure it matches nice. And I did want to mention that we do have plans available if you're interested in making these particular cabinets as well as the last one. And then I'll be having a full package with the entire miter station once we get that all wrapped up. And I also wanted to thank everybody that's supporting the channel. And if you're new here and you like what we're doing, consider subscribing. It would really help us out. All right, and so that's the build for today. We got this in place. Now next time we're going to be putting it all together. We're going to put in the T-tracks on both of them, the tape measure, we'll get the platform for the miter saw, as well as the automatic dust collection. So we'll see you guys in the next one.